Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rigby Campfire podcast. We've had such tremendous feedback from the two previous episodes. I am joined once again by, in this case, a true legend of big game hunting, Mr. Robin Hurt. Robin, it's lovely to have you on the show with us. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Mark. Great to see you and great to be here with you.
Well, we were just talking just before we came on, actually, before we started recording, and about a story with Stuart Granger. I mean, that's quite a name there. When someone can talk to a famous hunter such as yourself, who can then drop in names like Stuart Granger, it sort of reminds me of, I suppose, just how much of a small fish I am in this big hunting pond of legends such as yourself.
Well, I wouldn't say you're a small picture at all in it. I mean, you think what Rigby's done and how many of Rigby rifles have been used for over 100 years in Africa now. You chaps are pretty much up there and have a huge following.
Well, it's very kind of you to say, Robin. And I think the way I sort of see Rigby is it's this quiet thread which runs through safari hunting, where people such as yourself and other famous hunters, over the generations and the years who have carried these amazing rifles. Rigby's always quietly in the background of many a safari, and it's something I'm very proud of. But Robin, we're here today to talk about our recent trip, which I know we've got some footage and some audio coming up in the show from last year, where we went and visited your fantastic place there in Namibia, where you yourself and your beautiful wife Pauline are so very passionate about Rhino. I'd love you just to, in a few words, just to talk about your project there and about our visit and the unfortunate poaching incidents which are becoming more and more prevalent.
Since you came to see us, we had an unfortunate incident where one of our young rhino bulls was poached, and that was a deeply upsetting experience. It was so upsetting that actually I couldn't get the smell out of my nose for several days. I mean, that's how bad it affected me. The thing is, when you know an animal really well like that, you grow attached to it. And these are wild rhino. That they can go wherever they want on our property. But unfortunately, it was an inside job. One of the rangers was involved in it, and they shot this rhino, and it was a horrible thing because they used small caliber bullets to kill him, and we couldn't recover any of those when the police and the Blue Rhino people came, and we had to dissect the rhino to find the bullets. We couldn't find any, so they're all shot with small, soft-nosed bullets, about 7 of them, and there was one 416 bullet that they used to finish him off, obviously. And that one we recovered. But what happened was a few days later, one of our neighbors had their rhinos poached, 3 of them in one go. And these rhinos had their horns taken off, and they just had the stumps remaining. And the poachers killed them just for the stumps, because just those stumps alone are worth well over $100,000 US. A rhino with full horn, you're talking about $250,000 to $300,000, even up to $500,000, depending on the weight of the horn. Anyway, one of the guys was shot by the anti-poaching people, another one wounded, and the other one escaped into the bush, and they caught him 3 days later. But the guy who was shot, because they started shooting at the anti-poaching people, so they retaliated in self-defense. The one who was shot had a cell phone, and on his cell phone he had photographs of his various friends. And the next thing is the police contacted us with these photographs and said, "Do you recognize any of these people?" And one of them was the chap working here. So they said to us, "Whatever you do, don't alarm him, let him get on with things and pretend that all's okay." 2 days later they arrived, and they went with my stepson Daniel up to the anti-poaching camp. And when this guy saw them coming, he just immediately gave up and said, "I'm guilty of..." I mean, he admitted straight away he was involved. And it was actually very unfortunate because he was such a nice guy. And we couldn't believe that he was involved. Anyway, so that's the sad story of it. And it's something that I've been around. I've seen lots of dead animals in my time from hunters and things. And this is the only one that has affected me so badly. Mainly because we knew him. And, I think I made the point, we would never hunt the rhino on our property, never. I mean, how can you hunt an animal that you know? We were talking about ethics a little bit earlier, and that's one of the things. I simply could not hunt an animal that I know well and feel happy about it, because it wouldn't be a hunt. It wouldn't be the chance of the chase that we talked about earlier.
It's so interesting. Recently at Rigby's in London, we had an incident with some, should we call them animal rights activists who targeted our business. And when it came to removing them from a particular building, it's quite a long story, maybe for another podcast, I actually took the time to sit down with them. And, believe it or not, I said, what is it that you guys really want? And they were so filled with hatred for what we do as a company and what we stand for. And when I sort of expressed to them that perhaps actually what we want is the same thing that they want, and that is sustainable, healthy numbers of all animals, that there is a very healthy position for ethical hunting within a wider conservation sort of umbrella, but they were just simply weren't able or willing to listen to that, of course. But it's, I think someone as such as yourself, and I talked earlier, you truly are a legend of our industry, and anyone out there who has had the pleasure of meeting you at the shows or read your book, or in some cases hunted with you, will agree with me on that. But for all of that hunting, you are like the rest of us in that you really believe in this case, the preservation of your beautiful rhino. And I think that's something that's so often lost.
A part of conservation nowadays is there are too many people who base their feelings on sentiment and not on realism and not on science. That is one of the big problems, which is one of the reasons we have this situation in UK where they're trying to ban trophies being imported, which would be a horrific mistake from the African point of view. What people don't understand is Africans need to manage their wildlife. They need to benefit from it. It needs to be an attractive land form option that is different to agriculture, that is different to cattle farming. It's a very healthy environment where the animals can range freely, but it has to support itself.
Totally agree with you, Robin. And it's, I think what is so special about your place, you're talking about sort of beautiful areas, your rhino are not fenced, that these are free roaming rhino in a truly spectacular location. It only makes their protection all the harder.
It does. Since the poaching incident, we now have 6 full-time rangers, 4 that operate in the daytime and 2 that operate at nighttime. So we have 24 surveillance on the rhino, what's happening. So in the morning, the rhino teams track up the rhinos. They report back to us when they've seen them all. And during the night, the ones that we consider the most vulnerable, the rangers go out and they spend the night literally on top of a hill watching for somebody walking around with a torch or any kind of movement like that. To be honest with you, Mark, there's not much difference between somebody like me and a shepherd who manages his sheep, who shepherds his sheep. The shepherd loves his sheep. He uses one occasionally. I choose not to manage sheep. I choose to manage wildlife. And that is what I am. I'm a wildlife manager. I love our wildlife. I look after it because I love it. But occasionally we use one. And that means some of the plains game that we have here. We have to pay the bills. And this is one of the reasons where Rigby has come up and supported us so amazingly, is because keeping rhinos is a hugely expensive proposition. Very, very expensive. I think I told you that our average costs are well over $100,000 a year. Now, in a time of drought, which it looks like is going to happen again this year, that can double. Without people helping us, we simply cannot manage. And that is why Rigby partnering with us on looking after the rhino is so incredibly valuable and important. And you chaps are real conservationists, and that's what it's all about. Conservation means wise use. It does not mean total protection. And there's always confusion among some people about what is conservation. I'm a conservationist. I'm not a protectionist. And conservation means I have to look after the land. I have to look after the wildlife that's here.
Thank you for your kind words there, Robin. In a recent meeting, we were discussing the various projects Rigby's has supported over the years, the Jim Corbett National Park, the Habitat for Rhino. And we worked out that on an estimate, we'd raised over $1 million in 11 years through SEI, Dallas, these other organizations to go towards different conservation projects. And it's something that is very, very close to my heart at Rigby's, that whilst, of course, it is a commercial enterprise like all businesses are, it is a fantastic platform to be able to give back and to, in this case with the rhino, to protect and to provide for such an iconic species for future generations to enjoy.
Thank you very much, Mark.
I think what we'll do now is probably hand over to some of the footage from our visit last, 2.5 years ago. Once again, thank you so very, very much, Pauline and Robin, for having us down, allowing us to be part of your amazing project there, conserving these beautiful rhino. We're here visiting Pauline and Robin Hertz, who own this amazing property in order to support their Habitat for Rhino project, which is a conservation program supporting 12 free-roaming wild white rhino, incredibly rare creatures, very precious creatures. They have reintroduced them into this area. This area would have naturally have held white rhino, and when they bought the property 20 years ago, it was part of a plan to bring these animals here. Rigby's have been asked and invited very kindly by Pauline and Robin to help support them in a fundraising project. So Rigby's will be producing 12 350 London Best rifles, each individually marked with the name of one of the rhinos which lives on this amazing place, with the logo of the Habitat for Rhino project, and we will be selling those to willing clients who would like to own a future collector's item, but also to support an amazing project by two amazing people.
Our biggest threat is poaching. I mean, it's a huge problem throughout Africa, wherever rhino occur. For example, in South Africa recently, just in the last few months of this year, lost over 250 rhino through poaching. Those are the ones they know about. How many do we not know about? Here in Namibia, we've also had an upsurge in poaching. So it's a really, really big problem. And people say, well, why don't you just cut the horns off and then the rhinos won't be a target. But that's not true. The poachers will kill just for the stump, because even the stump has a huge value. Well, let's put one thing in perspective. I am a hunter, but I'm also a conservationist. And the two go hand in hand. Conservation is hugely expensive. I mean, hugely expensive. That's what a lot of people don't realize. They see these animals wandering around. They don't realize that it takes money to keep them.
We have been here for how many years now?
We bought this place 20 years ago.
Yeah, we used to come intermittently, and then because Robin had business in Tanzania and even in England, actually, we had a business. So then we moved permanently here as our home.
This property here is about 24,000 acres. The rhinos that we have here are free to roam within that area. We initially brought in 5 rhino, and they were sponsored by various people.
You are seeing the land at its best right now, almost at its best, because we've had a very good rain year, but normally, no rain, very little rain, and then we have to buy and feed, and that costs. Whoa, that costs.
Yeah. We had 6 years of drought before we've had these 2 years of good rains. We were feeding the rhinos, and we were having to import lucerne all the way from South Africa. It was costing us about $120,000, $130,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we have to bear in mind that could happen again. But currently it's costing us, we'll have to ask Dan the exact figures, but I would say a minimum 50,000 at the moment. And by the time you've figured out, because it's not just the guys walking around, it's the transportation, moving people around, doing this, doing that. And we have to get all of our other, when they can't find all of the rhinos, then we have everybody out the next day. Okay, Mark, this is one of our anti-poaching guys. He walks at least 20 kilometers every day, tracking up the rhino and reporting back to us. Okay. Because there's a huge problem with poaching. So that's why we have the anti-poaching guys out in the bush. This project was started by my wife, Pauline. It was her idea. She wanted to give something back to the wildlife.
How many rhino do you have here?
We have 12.
12.
And we recently had a new baby, which we're going to go and look at now. And in honor of you chaps who are helping us with our project, it's called Miss Rigby.
How many calves would she be able to?
Every 3 years. So,
okay. Yeah. You're absolutely right. They look truly prehistoric, amazing creatures.
The little baby's moving now. That's Miss Rigby.
And how is their eyesight, generally speaking?
Not bad. Okay. Any sudden movement they'll pick it up, but they use their ears. More than anything, you watch your ears. They're constantly moving, picking up any noise.
Yes. What's so sad is that this amazing creature, just for that bit of horn on the front, is persecuted.
Terrible. Do you realise each rhino walking around has got $250,000 hanging on its nose?
Yeah.
That is the problem.
Yeah, it's tragic.
And that is why, if we were ever allowed to harvest horn, it would kill the market.
Yes.
And it would stop poaching.
Yeah.
And it would make rhino more valuable. More people would want to have them.
Yes. Yeah. Remarkable to be so close.
Well, we'll get even closer shots, but we need to be in a place where there's a rock or something that we can climb up to be safe.
Yeah.
White rhinos always put their calves in front. You see how the calves in front?
Yes.
Now, if they get up and move, the baby will go in front, and she will follow it.
Oh, but why is that?
It's their way of protecting them. So they know what's going on, and they can see where the baby's going. And those little babies, they can run like hell. You wouldn't believe it.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
The thing I find most profound about this moment now is really thinking that we could be some of the last people to ever see these things in the wild.
Yeah. If the poaching carries on,
it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah. Making things illegal often
doesn't change it.
No.
Yeah.
Look at the alcohol ban they had in America in the early 1900s.
But it seems to make sense in what you're saying, that to work with this demand in order to to save the rhino.
Yeah.
And as you were telling us last night over dinner, that these rhino don't need to be killed in order to harvest the horn. They can be just regularly dehorned.
You have to dart them to anaesthetize them. And all the horn is like our fingernails, is pectin, and so it grows back. So you can harvest a rhino's horn 5 times in its lifetime.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about that, if you convert that into funds, I mean, it's a huge amount.
Absolutely.
And the other problem is, having anti-poaching and all these things is hugely expensive. And rhinos need to, if they're going to survive in the long term, they need to be able to pay for themselves. That's basically what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Your idea of raising funds through your charity is such a good one, and something that we really appreciate. There's no question that your sale of these Habitat for Rhino rifles will definitely pay for 1 year of keeping the rhinoes. And
thank you so much for inviting us.
It's a big deal,
But I suppose it's, looking at this from the outside, it's difficult to, I think a lot of people out there want to help, who want to do something, but it's difficult to know, how to channel that in an effective way. And, the project you have here and your reputation and, and Pauline's, passion for the project is what really inspired us to become involved. So we've been driven around and shown the wildlife and the rhinos which benefit from the program here. It is such a privilege to be up so close to free-roaming wild white rhino. It can be extremely dangerous, although being with two absolute professionals, being able to get so close gave a, a level of comfort. But to be often just 30 or 40 yards away from these creatures, they are absolutely magnificent. And as I say, for working at Rigby's, it's taken us to some amazing places, and this week has been right up there. So the 12 350s, when we originally started this project, we felt, deep within us that we wanted to support the amazing work that is done. Rigby's always had a historical relationship with hunters and people who support conservation, Jim Corbett being most notable. And in those early discussions, we weren't sure if we would produce 1 rifle, 5 rifles, but it felt very appropriate to build initially 11 rifles, 1 for each of the rhinos that live here. In recent weeks, a 12th rhino has been born, which in our honour very kindly has been named Miss Rigby. So there'll be 12 rifles in the 350 Rigby Magnum calibre, London Best, completely handmade in our London workshops on Mauser single square bridge actions, taking designs and proportions and dimensions from our sort of historic museum collection of guns that we have. They'll be marked individually with the names of the rhinos, and they will each feature on the floor plate a beautiful engraving of the logo created by Pauline Habitat for Rhino. As a young person who's coming up through the ranks, who I've been, as we all are, very passionate about hunting since I was a boy, it really isn't lost on me to be sat here with 2 absolute legends of African hunting, feeling like a complete fraud, quite frankly.
He's a legend.
Yeah, no, I really mean it.
I'm just his sidekick.
Kids.
I would say infamous rather than legend.
perhaps, but us younger guys and girls coming up through and reading stories of yours, Robin, and Paul's stories. You guys are really the reason that a lot of people want to get into this and who get very excited about it. So, Robin, why don't you tell us about your history with the 350 Rigby cartridge?
Yeah. I've always liked the 350 because it was the very first Rigby I ever used. I was 18 years old and I was employed to do some game control, and I was given the estates rifle, Block Estates, that used to belong to Jack Block, who owned the New Stanley in the Norfolk Hotel, and he owned Longonot Farm, which was a huge ranch in the Rift Valley, with enormous amounts of game. So I was employed to reduce the zebra numbers there. There were far too many. So Tinier, my tracker, and myself were issued with a 350 Rigby, and that's what I used. And 90% of the animals we shot, just one shot. It only had open sights, so we had to perfect our stalking to get close. And stalking zebras in herds to get it within 100 yards, not easy, as you know, Paul.
Yes. It's got a good trajectory actually for the calibre. I was very pleased. I did some long shots with 350s and I was very happy with, very similar to the 3006 really in many respects.
Sort of in between 3006 and the 375, yeah. but equally effective. I mean, you could hunt dangerous game with it. Well, a leopard and lion, it's a perfect calibre. Other dangerous game, I would think twice about it, although in the old days, when you think people like Bell were shooting elephants with 275s, I mean, the 350 was quite popular. I mean, some people used it a lot. I mean, even Bell used the 350. And I mean, I just loved it. And that was my experience, my first experience with the 350. After that, Paul persuaded me to buy a 416, which I know.
He didn't need much persuading, I tell you.
Anyway, my son Derek now has that rifle.
I was quite surprised at the trajectory figures, and it's about 2600 at the muzzle, so with a 225 grain bullet. I think it's very, very suitable for modern day
very
hunting.
flat shooting. I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't hesitate shooting 200 and 300 yards with it.
Well, I've not used it beyond about 150, but no problem at all at that range.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
What I liked about the 350 that I had, it was quite a light rifle, and when I first acquired it and shot it, I thought it would kick, but it was actually very mild for the amount of power that there was in it. I think it was the big case that reduced the actual impact of recoil impact, and you could build them fairly light, and the original Rigbys were quite heavy mostly.
Compared to a 375,
yes.
the recoil is mild. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And that's why it's a very pleasant rifle to shoot.
I'm so pleased that Rigbys have reintroduced it. It was one of the great classic calibers that stand up well in the modern world.
When you hold it in your hand, a cartridge from the 350, it looks like a miniature 416.
Yes.
And I often wondered whether, John Rigby just scaled it up to a 40 caliber for the 416.
Maybe it is.
5-6 years later.
Is it the same diameter?
The proportions of it, if you look at them side by side, it looks, like a miniature version.
I'd say it's sort of a fifth narrower or something, but very similar in dimensions.
Well, and
Absolutely.
the other nice advantage, which I'm not that keen on these belted cases, and this the 350 does not have a belt on it, which makes it easy to feed. You never get jams.
No belt.
No belt, yes, no jams.
I built 2 or 3 in my Rigby days, and we never had a feed problem with them. They were very slick to feed. But ammunition was the problem in the old days. Rigbys in the 60s and 70s hadn't produced enough ammo, and luckily I was able to acquire some. But when I ran low, I was obviously thinking of changing because I couldn't get any more ammo.
Out of interest, what rifle are you holding there?
Oh, this is the new 275, which is absolutely a classic.
Is that what's
Rigby.
known as the Highland Stalker? Or
It's the Highland Stalker in 275 Rigby. It's also made in other calibers, 3006 and 9.3, but it has all the characteristics of a Rigby, and Marc has introduced a few very salient points. He's made a higher backside, which allows you to use the scope over the mounts, whereas the originals, the backside was a bit lower, so scoping them was a bit of a problem. He's raised the comb slightly, so because of the higher iron sights, it still works well, and at the same time with a scope you haven't got to move your head.
Still got a tight fit on it.
And he's made the bolts ready to receive a scope should you want to put one on. All good points, really.
And that's one of your 416s, right?
Yes, Robin. This is the 416 Rigby in the big game model, which we do. We offer it in a single square and a double square bridge. This is the single square bridge, so iron sights only. And we've modelled it on the pre-war 416s, which made the company so famous.
So famous,
And it's a lovely thing to to have out here in Africa. And there's something about these rifles that I find, in London they look magnificent, in the showroom, but they really come alive when you're out here. And of course, hunting and being in the bush, a lot of it is walking and looking and waiting, and having a beautiful rifle in your hands is.
What's interesting about the 416 Rigby? It has the most incredible penetration of any cartridge that I've ever used. It's the only cartridge that I've ever seen shoot all the way through an elephant bull on a body shot.
Wow.
All the way through.
Wow.
That was in Uganda in 1964 and 65, sorry. And I was hunting with a friend of mine, Ian Ross, who had a 416, and when he shot that bull, I could hear it going out the other side. Bing! Couldn't believe it.
Bloody hell.
Couldn't believe it.
Ron, can you tell us a little bit about the series of rifles we're going to produce to raise the funds for the conservation project here?
Well, very kindly, you have offered to make 12 Habitat for Rhino rifles, which will have the Habitat for Rhino logo engraved on the floor plate, correct?
Yes,
which would be here. And you're going to be selling those, and a large percentage of the proceedings is going to come back directly to conserve rhinos in this place here. So that's an extremely generous gesture from Rigby, and highly, highly appreciated. And it'll make a huge difference to us, because it means we will have funding for a whole year, or maybe even a bit more, depending on the conditions of the terrain. If it's a drought year, then that'll all get eaten up. If it's a normal year like this, then we'll have a bit to carry forward to the next year. And the reason being, for the 350, it is not a suitable rhino caliber. Yeah. So that is the reason we adopted the 350 Rigby. Perfect for plains game.
Yeah.
Even large plains game like Eland and things.
Yeah. And we've got cartridge manufacturers now that can really produce good projectiles, which will make it highly flexible in what it's used for.
To be in this amazing place, to sit with them at the campfire, to listen to legendary stories, absolutely humbling. Paul Roberts, who has taught me all that I knew and know at Rigby's, took me under his wing as a young guy. To be out here in this place and to share time with him has been incredibly special. And to listen to Robin and his knowledge of this place and the animals, the rhino, is equally humbling. An amazing experience, and right up there with a lot of the things that we've done at Rigby's.
If we did not have the anti-poaching team, there is no question we would have had poaching by now. These guys are very good. I mean, they walk 15, 20, 30 kilometers a day, checking on the rhino, checking for human incursions into the area. I mean, they're just brilliant. And they're really the unsung heroes. And these people, I can't praise them enough. They are so dedicated. And, you know, the opportunity for poaching is so high because a poacher can go and kill a rhino and in one day make as much money as he would in a whole year. I mean, they're not getting the huge money that the dealers get in Asia, but they still get a significant amount here. And that is the problem. If this carries on at the current rate, the white rhino could be extinct within a matter of 10 years.
And Simeon, how do you feel to work here, helping to look after the rhino at Gamsberg?
We need to protect them so that we can also, it is depend on our jobs. If there is no animal, there is no work.
I'm happy for this job, for Gamsberg, for Robin Hood Safaris, and we're looking after everything animal, sabres, rhinos. Every single day we need to know where they are.
Yes.
And we're looking after them, and we protect them. We save them here, and that's why we need them here, because we find our life hang from them.
And what would happen to the wild animals here if you gentlemen were not here to keep them safe?
If we not protect them, anybody can come and poaching them.
It's something absolutely core to our brand DNA at Rigby's. The entire team feel very passionate about supporting these conservation projects around the world, doing what we can as a company. We've benefited over the years of producing hunting rifles which come out to this amazing continent, and we feel duty bound to do what we can.
One thing we have to understand is safari hunting is one of the best forms of paying for conservation.
Absolutely.
You can't have wild animals all through this habitat and not paying for themselves.
Yeah.
So we could have cattle here, but I choose, instead of managing cattle, I choose to manage wildlife. And that is what I am. I'm really a manager of wildlife. Yeah. A hunter is secondary. My main interest is looking after my animals, because without any animals, we don't have a livelihood, we don't have a business.
The locals don't have employment?
No, well, just on this property alone, we have 20 odd people that depend on the wildlife.
Which would not be here if it wasn't for the wildlife.
No. If we were doing cattle farming, we'd have maybe 1 or 2 employees. That's it.
And a few machines.
Exactly, yeah. Over the past 15 years, we have generated over $3 million. In our areas in Tanzania, the local people are our partners, turning poaching communities into anti-poaching communities, and it's been hugely successful, and they benefit substantially from all the safaris that take place there.
That's called Robin Hood Wildlife Foundation.
Now, they don't get that money in cash. They have to come to us and say, this year we want that kind of a project. So we built something in the region of 60 odd school teachers' houses. We built over 30 schools. Over 30 hospital dispensaries. We've given out ambulances to the communities. We've given them maize grinding machines. I mean, it's been a big successful project. And the key to it is the women in the villages. If you get them on your side, because they know what they want, like schools, you know, the education is so crucial to the local people. They want to learn, they want their kids to go to school, they want their kids to have a better life. So education is one of the big things which we've been able to support. Your generosity and Rigby's generosity in coming up with the Habitat for Rhino rifle in 350
Yes.
Rigby
Thank you so much.
is such a generous undertaking.
So Dan, thank you so much for bringing us up here to this incredible viewing point. Can you tell us firstly a little bit about where we are?
So we're in the Commerce-Hochland region of Namibia, and Robin affectionately named this place the Badlands, but it's actually another term would be the Gramadulas or the Gamsberg and Hakos Plains. So it's a very mountainous region which drops quite a high height from the Gamsberg mountain, which is about 2,347 meters, all the way down about 3,000, 4,000 feet down into the Namib Desert.
And you are Robin's stepson?
I'm Robin's stepson.
Robin's stepson, and you are one of the stewards or guardians of this place?
I help manage the project for my mother and for Robin. I was here when we started the project, helped to keep an eye on them, manage the anti-poaching side and general day-to-day that goes on here. It's really a privilege to, firstly, to be living and being able to work in such a place like this, such an amazing wilderness, and to be able to host such a special animal, almost prehistoric, and help towards conserving it as a species is quite a privilege, I would say. So it has its challenges like everything else, but I truly feel very privileged to be a part of the project and to be helping conserve this amazing species in a truly wild and free-roaming area.
Absolutely. I think that's something that's really struck me about being here, is that there are no there are no material fences. It's the boundary of the mountains. The game can come and go as it wants, and to be around those free-roaming white rhino is extraordinary. And where can you see the Habitat for Rhino project in 20, 30 years? Where would you like it to be?
Hopefully through our conservancy and through like-minded neighbors, we'll be able to sort of grow our area, grow our anti-poaching team. Of course, we can only go as far as the funding can take us as well. So we're really thankful for what you guys are doing out here. Very, very much appreciated. We're hoping to grow it and keep it going, see the numbers increase, increase the land under which, hopefully expand the project, and keep seeing these animals flourishing and living in their natural habitat, as well as all the other unique and special species that we have here. So preserving this amazing nature and of course the rhino as a part of that.
It's really struck me actually that it isn't just the rhino, that the rhino being looked after benefits everything else, everything from the rhino down, because there is money coming in here, there is protection, there's anti-poaching, there's preservation of this amazing wild space. Robin talks about this, and he's absolutely right, that we're not just hunters, we are conservationists, and he described himself as kind of a shepherd, that instead of having sheep, he was looking after rhino on this place, and that there is a very important part for ethical fair chase hunting as part of a conservation project.
I would agree 100%. Without our hunting side of our business, none of this would have been made possible. The Habitat for Rhino program started a little bit later on, but we were already in conservation. A large part of our funding comes through the safaris that we partake in or host, whether those be photographic or hunting. And through generous people like yourselves and hunter conservationists that have added towards the project. You take that out and other forms of land use may come in. This area used to be a cattle farm. There was very, very little wildlife, and under our stewardship and under the hunter conservationist program that we have here, we've managed to see all our wildlife species flourish, and and it's expanded into getting a rhino back here, which is of course highly threatened.
It's very much a multifaceted approach. It's not a black and white issue. There's shades of grey in there, and whether it's photographic or sustainable hunting, or this project that we're doing here, you know, I think it's going to take an approach from many angles in order to really see the rhino and other game species flourish in the future. But thank you so much for hosting us.
Thank you very much, and thanks so much for helping us with the project.
Marc, I want to thank you, and with much appreciation for your generosity. And
well done, guys. You really set up something
Thank
good.
you.
It's your idea, but Rigby's generosity, and we appreciate it so much.
The plight of the African rhino, I think, is extremely tragic, extremely tragic, and to be up close to these animals this week, and I've really been sort of reflecting on how I felt about it, that we may be some of the last people to see these things in the wild. And we really do need to step up. Listening to Robin talking about the problems with poaching and the very organised criminal gangs that are taking these animals from these places, it's heartbreaking. And I think we need to all collectively rally together and do what we can to support these creatures, because they won't be there for our children and grandchildren to see in the wild in the future.